Hello and welcome. My name's John Dexter, in case you don't already know me. Hi everybody, hope we're all well. I'm quite excited about this video, this tutorial if you like, video, tutorial, whatever. Because I don't know whether you're a bit like me, but I find the most difficult thing with certainly my type of photography, I don't think it so much applies to things like landscape or portraiture or bird photography, but for sort of abstract or photographic art, I like to call it, the most difficult thing I find is not using the camera. That's pretty simple. Not even the editing process, although my skills in editing are pretty limited. But no, it is ideas. Coming up with new ideas, inspiration, creativity. I find that is probably the most difficult thing. If you're doing sort of landscapes, you see a landscape, you either know if it's going to make for a good image or not, and you go out looking for that image. With abstract, you've got to keep coming up with new ideas for compositions to suit your style. Now, I think it is a good idea to sort of mix up the pot a bit, if you like, rather than get stuck on one style. You can tend to get a little bit on the stale side, and I think that can easily show up in your images if you're not careful. So I always think it's a good idea to sort of mix it up a bit and think of new ideas, think of new ways to sort of create your images. So that is basically what I'm quite excited about today, for the simple reason I was getting to that stage where I was sort of finding it difficult to sort of think of new things. And I was walking the dog the other day, and it had just rained, and I was walking her down the lane where I live, and I saw a puddle. There were plenty of puddles, and I looked in the puddle and I saw this reflection of some trees, and I looked at it and I thought, that's sort of interesting. I wonder if it could sort of make for a good image to take the reflection. So the following day I picked up the camera, went back down the lane, took a few shots, got back, and I was sort of quite excited about the way it could go, or the potential of it. Not that those particular images were that great, but I thought there was potential to sort of make some good images from it. So I took myself off in the countryside the following day, looking for some puddles, which were a bit few and far between because they tended to dry out a bit. But I did find this byway which was sort of all muddy. So I parked the car, took the dog for a walk anyway, and there were quite a few sort of shots of reflections of the trees in these puddles, which I took. And I got back to the computer, had a look at them, and there were a couple there that I was really pleased with. So I took myself off to the forest, the New Forest, the following day, because I knew of an area where it does get boggy, and again took a few shots. And I then went up by this little stream, and the stream had sort of overflowed a bit, and there were all this sort of wet area, took some more images of some trees, which I was pleased with. And there is just nearby there is a big river, a long river. So the following day I went down to this river and walked the whole length of it, which is probably covered in trees about a mile, and I really got some nice images. Well, I think they're nice. I'm sort of pleased with them. So really excited by this, and I think I always like to share these with you guys, because you may be struggling to think of new sort of things to photograph. So if it gives you guys an idea just to try it, see how you get on, great. So that's where we're at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the images I've taken. I'm going to show you the raw file, and then I'm going to show you after I have edited them to show you the final image. And I'll run through with you a couple of things to look for, a couple of do's, a couple of don'ts, and yeah, we'll see where we go from there. And as I say, hopefully it'll inspire you to give it a go. So let's have a look at the first image. This was the first image taken on the day that I went out into the countryside on the byway, and I thought this had potential. I didn't like this area here. This is of course one of the problems with taking reflections in puddles, is you get twigs, leaves, dirt, everything else. Sometimes it actually adds to the image, and sometimes it doesn't, and in this case, this area here and this here I didn't like, so I put that into Photoshop Elements and I used the brush to get rid of that. I then opened it up in Capture NX2, which I will do for you now. So this is the raw image with those little leaves or twigs or whatever they were removed. And the first thing I did to this image, which I do to a lot of my images, is I do a double threshold on it to see whether it improves it. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it absolutely destroys the image, but I always give it a go first. And in this case, if I turn it on, I thought it actually improved it. Turn it off and on. The next thing I did, which I'm finding with these images, I'm sort of only really using sort of three settings, which is contrast, saturation and color booster. So I gave it some contrast, and then I gave it some saturation, and finally some color boost, which has given me that. Now, something that I do sometimes do is I use in the if I go to new steps, I go to the focus and I choose unshape mask, and I push that, if we have a look, I've pushed that to 50% on the intensity and the radius, which for this sort of image it can really make the image pop. Let me turn it on. There, see what a difference it makes. It really sort of brings the image alive, I think, especially for these reflections. Now, the only side effect can be with pushing this to that degree, is you can either create a lot of noise in the image, or you can get ghosting, especially in something like this where there's sort of branches up against the sky. You can probably see there's a bit of ghosting against the blue sky, so you've got to sort of keep an eye on that. Some of the images I found it was too much, so I either did away with it completely or reduced the setting. But do you know, as far as the actual ghosting goes, as long as it's not too severe, I don't think it matters in an image like this, in a sort of abstract image like this. And as far as the grain, bringing the grain out, sometimes that actually enhances the image, because we're with abstract or photographic art, it's a completely different ball game to sort of straightforward conventional photography, if you like. So it's all a case of what suits the image, what you like, and what you think works. So it's always worth giving it a go, and if you don't like it, you can always delete it. I checked my highlights and shadows and just adjusted those in de-lighting. And final thing I did to this, let me get rid of that first. But last thing I did to this was I gave it a crop. And that was it. I was I was really pleased with that. I liked the colours. I just liked the sort of final image that I managed to capture purely through a reflection in a puddle. So that was the first one that I did. This is the image taken down by the stream where the water had sort of overflowed, and I absolutely loved the colours. This is the raw file. This is straight out of the camera. I loved the turquoisey, greeny sort of colours that was produced. I liked the leaves that were floating on the water. I think they were leaves anyway. It could just be mud. Not too sure what this was down here. Probably again mud in the puddle. But that's the beauty of taking reflections in puddles. You know, you don't only get the reflection of the trees, but you get all the colouring of the water and the mud and whatever sort of colour the mud is. Ideally, you want to do this on a calm day where there isn't much wind, because if you've got a lot of wind blowing over the surface of the water, it does tend to obliterate the reflection. But having said that, if you get a little bit of a breeze, as in this image, it can have quite a nice effect. And if I just enlarge this, you can see the effect that it has made in the image, and that is purely from a slight breeze blowing on the water. That can actually be quite nice. So that's something worth bearing in mind, but you don't want it too windy, otherwise the reflection disappears completely. I was really happy with the colours that came straight out of this camera for this image, but I gave it some contrast and some saturation, which I think made the image stand out more. And again, the unshaped mask, I gave it 50% on the intensity and the radius, which has given me that. And in actual fact, this image was okay with that. It didn't bring any grain out, and I didn't get any ghosting, so it really worked for this particular image. And the last thing I did to it was cropped it. So yeah, I think I prefer this to the other one, but I was really pleased with that. This was taken in the same place as the previous one. Probably the puddle was a slightly different colour, because I've got this sort of pinky colour, which is the colour of the, I don't think it was actually so much mud as sort of the colour of the actual dirt itself. I said before, the first thing I did was try the double threshold to see if it improved the image, and it really did in this case. It sort of brought the colours out, this lovely sort of pink and blues, so that was good. I gave it a little bit of contrast. I also checked the highlights and the shadows to see if they were blown out. In actual fact, I'm not really too fussed if the shadows are blown out, and I think if we go into the shadows, you'll see that the actual tree itself has lost shadows, but I'm not really too fussed about that, because when it's printed that will be black anyway, but I do like to control the highlights. I don't like blown out highlights, so a little bit of active delighting to control that. Now this one really didn't suit the unshaped mask adjustment. It really made the image grainy. I don't think it was actual grainy, I think it was just the sort of dirt in the puddle. So I didn't use that, but I did use the high pass filter, which is not so aggressive, and if I turn that on, you'll see it's made a, turn it on and off, it's made a small adjustment to the sharpness of the image, but not as severe as the unshaped mask does. So I think for this particular image that suited it, and finally I just cropped it slightly. So yeah, I was really pleased with that one, and I like this little swirl of water. I think that was probably a bubble in the water. But that's the thing with these reflections, you get all these little tiny things in the image which, you know, can really make it. One thing I must say, as far as focusing goes, you don't focus on the surface of the water, because you will lose your reflection completely. You literally focus on the reflection. So we're not really too bothered about depth of field, because you haven't really got any depth there. So taking it on an aperture setting of somewhere around about 5.6 is absolutely fine. So that's something worth bearing in mind. Now these next two images I was especially pleased with. Again, this is the raw file, and this was on the third day when I went down by the river, and the river was flowing over some rocks, and it was giving this beautiful sort of pattern in the water. And also I had the reflection of the tree, which was being bent by the reflection of this part flowing over the rocks, and I thought that was absolutely lovely. It was this would have made for a nice image on its own without the tree, but yeah, it was absolutely stunning, and I got quite a couple of nice shots from this. This is the first one. Now I did put this into Photoshop Elements and get rid of these. It was just sort of like white scum floating down the river. I got rid of those because I didn't think that did anything for the image. And I also put this into iColorama and checked the tone levels and picked one that I thought really suited this image, because I couldn't quite get the colours how I wanted them in Capture NX2. So I will now show you the image after that adjustment. So as you can see, I've got rid of those white bits, and the iColorama made a wonderful job of bringing those colours out, I thought. So I didn't really have to do a lot more to this. Again, I checked for my highlights and shadows, so it just adjusted the de-lighting a bit, and I thought a little crop suited that image better, and I was really pleased with that. So it just goes to show you what beautiful effects you can get purely from a reflection. This is the second image taken in exactly the same place as the last one, by this water running over these rocks, but a slightly different composition, probably a little bit wider angle on the lens, which has sort of brought in these reflection of these trees at the top. Auto retouch brush, that was just to get rid of that little white spot there. Again, double threshold really did improve this image, I thought, and saturation brought the colours out, and also a little bit of contrast. And I actually played with the levels and curves on this one, which has given me that, because I thought it was a little bit on the dark side. Just adjusting the levels and curves has made it a much more subtle image, I think, or subtle colours. It gave it a oh yeah, the unshaped mask for this one, again, I gave it a 50-50, which has really made the image, it's just transformed the image. And for this one, again, I got away with those adjustments on that. Again, de-lighting, and it gave it a little crop. Really pleased with that. I don't know whether I prefer this one or the previous one for that little bit of the river, but you know, it's amazing the effects you can get, and it's so exciting, because you really don't know what you're going to get until you have a look at it on the computer, and I'm finding this really exciting. Now, the final image I have to show you, I actually amalgamated these two images together in layers, which I will show you the result I got with that, which was this. Now, this was actually done in iColorama, amalgamating the two images in layers, and then I just went through the tones to see which one suited the image, and this was the final, well, this was the result out of iColorama. And then in NX2 I just gave a slight colour boost, not a lot, and eventually just gave it a little crop, and I thought that was quite a nice effect. I really like the effect that gave me. There you go, that is just about it. That is the images that I produced over the 3 days. As I say, really exciting to do this, and I will definitely be doing more of it. So I will just put up at the end of this video running through the images which I've done. Let me know which one's your favourite. I'm always interested to hear, and you know, give it a go yourself. It's can produce some really nice results. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. If you've liked this, please tick the thumbs up box for me. It all helps. And any comments, please feel free to put them in the comments box below. So I think that's all that left to be said. Is thank you very much for watching. Hope it's been inspiring and helpful to you. Until the next time, this is John Dexter saying bye for now.